Hi, welcome back to part two of Blues Talk. We're going John, Dave, and myself. We're going to look forward to our game against Glasgow next weekend, and of course talk a bit more about some rugby chat. So, boys, we play Glasgow, as I said, up in Scottstown on Saturday. First time we're going to play there on their 4G pitch.
Yeah, well, that's going to favour them as well. I fear. A, they've been training on it. B, it's going to suit their style of rugby.
Leinster have their own 4G pitch that they train on.
Well, that's true, but it's a different 4G pitch in a different. Do they train on it much?
They use it a fair bit, all right.
In Donnybrook?
No, there's one out in
UCD.
UCD.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise.
I'd say they'll be using it quite extensively this week.
Yeah.
Do you know, actually, Glasgow haven't been beaten, I think they've only lost one game in Scottstown since November 2013.
Well, we didn't lose a game last season either, so at home in the league.
Teams that finish at the top of the league generally have fairly dominant home records, and the teams that finish top in the league are the teams that kind of extract the most from their away games. That's just how the format works. I don't know how much we're going to extract from this.
No.
Glasgow look like a team that are very, very sharp straight away. They look to have more of their players available to them.
Overconfidence is the only thing we can hope for. After the hiding they gave Connacht.
We have good we have good players. Leinster are a good team that has underperformed over the last 2 years. So
would you
the
think
guys are there?
We say just looking back on the match last weekend, we don't really know what is our best. Like currently, the players that we currently have available to us. I don't think that the coaches know what our best formation is. Like we picked Ringrose at 13, but he played on the wing. We're picking centres that don't seem to be able to distribute. And you just kind of think, well, Jesus, like, would you not play Ringrose in at 13 and try and get the ball out and move it around?
Well, Ringrose isn't famed for his distribution skills either. In fairness, what he is he's a stepper and a power guy. He's not really a distributor.
He's got far more skill, Dave, than fucking our centres combined.
Possibly.
Like, put it this way, Dave. In 3 years' time, Kirshner will be retired with the same amount of caps that he has currently for the Springboks. Noel Reid won't get any, or maybe one more Irish cap in a match when they play America. But Ringrose is going to have 30 Irish caps.
Yeah, but I'd say most of them will come on the wing.
Well, maybe they will, but like he's still that good. He's going to get picked for his national team.
But I think there's a couple of things. I think Ringrose playing on the wing benefits Leinster because I have a feeling that when what's his name Henshaw comes in, he's going to play 13. I have a feeling that that's what he's going to do.
Who's going to play 12 then?
Well, I think we're screwed. I don't know. I mean, if everything was fine and dandy and everyone was dancing along happy and Larry, it would be Henshaw and Ringrose. But I don't think that's going to happen because I think that apart from anything, Joe Schmidt wants a replacement for Andrew Trimble. He wants Andrew Trimble, Mark II, the younger years, and he sees Trimble as that guy, or sees Ringrose as that guy.
But Trimble ran the shortest distance between 2 points. He didn't jink around anyone.
Oh no, Trimble was a big step. When he had pace, he was a big stepper. So he was.
Yeah, I don't see Gary Ringrose being a Trimble at all. I'd see him. I don't see him being a Brian O'Driscoll either, but I'd see him being playing in that position. I mean, if you look at what Ireland have, are they going to move? Is Bundy Eki going to hang around? Is he going to play for Ireland? Are they going to move?
It is the position of greatest need out wide in Ireland. I mean, we've a lot of okay wingers, and some of them are getting quite old. Whereas we've got a lot of centres. We've got Luke Marshall, we've got Stuart Olding, we've got Bundy Aki. Hopefully that's the plan. We've got what's his face? I keep forgetting the guy's name. He's just like Henshaw. Then there's Jared Payne. Is he a centre? Is he a fullback? There's centre is a position of strength for Ireland. Wing is a position of weakness.
I don't know about that. Anyway, let's not get too bogged down in
So I think we might.
Ireland.
I think there may be a knock on with that. But I
think that they should be putting Ringrose into 13 and giving him plenty of time at 13. Who it's outside, whether it's Noel Reid, I'd actually give your man O'Loughlin a punt at it.
He came on as fullback. He replaced Rob Carney,
which was odd.
But he actually ended up playing centre because Kirshner went back to fullback.
All right.
But he replaced Carney.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's worth having a look at. O'Loughlin at 12 and Ringrose outside him. But you have to start as you mean to continue. It's Glasgow next week. It's not Experiment City. It's try and get your best players on the bar.
Internationals back?
It looks like week too soon syndrome for Nasewa and Dave Carney. I wouldn't be surprised to see Nasewa. He's that kind of guy that might just make it. Heaslip, the old werewolf genes, or what are they called? Wolverine genes. He might be back. Others that might feature Tyg Furlong, and there's another one or two as well who are on the tip of my tongue. Jack McGrath. I don't think we need Jack McGrath. We're so well stocked at Loosehead.
The bench that they brought on last week.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that we'll get very, very few of the internationals back.
Well, they're the possibilities, I think. Anyway,
We might get a hooker.
Yeah, Cronin. That was the other one I was trying
Might
to
get a
think
hooker.
of. Yeah.
But apart from that, I don't see us getting very many others back. Furlong.
Cronin and Furlong.
I don't think we'll see.
The most
don't
likely.
think we'll see. I'd say our
Toner is another possibility.
our compensation for losing Conan was Murphy. So I don't think we'll see Heaslip.
Well, the other side of it is you don't have they're the ones we've just named are the ones that are not actually injured. Now they're alleging that Sexton and quite a few others could be back for Edinburgh, or more likely Ospreys. The only two that are real long term are that are going to be October are O'Brien and Henshaw. Yeah, and Strauss might be a little bit into October as well, but everybody else seems to be due for a September return. So I think the Ospreys at home is when you're going to see pretty much everybody bar Henshaw and O'Brien.
Everyone who's 100% fit or near enough to it will be.
But God knows we could do it this weekend. I don't know. Are the coaching team looking at it? Let's kick the shite out of them and see can we get a losing bonus point, or limit their scoring, or stop them getting a 4 try.
I always think that if you try and stop a team by winning by not much, you're going out to lose in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think that's in the minds. I think we're going to go out and try and play to win. Whether we'll be able to, I don't know. If we pick up a losing bonus point, I'd be really quite happy with that.
You were beaten 12-6 last year. It was a rearranged game. There was a match called off last December.
On a quagmire, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, there won't be any quagmires anyway. It'll be all nice 4G or 3G or 3.78G or whatever the hell it is.
UMTS. It'll. I mean, Glasgow are a very strong team. They're a very strong team that have a lot of their players available and playing well.
And they've hit the ground running. And they've hit big style.
Leinster, though, are still a very good team. If we get the right combination on the pitch, we could do well.
We could.
To be perfectly honest, I would, if it were up to me, I would have a plan that would involve the ball being treated at halftime for vitamin D deficiency. Exactly. I would not let it see sunlight. It would be because one area where we are better than them is we have better forwards, and we have lots of them.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 2 packs that are better than their pack. Simple as that.
Yeah. 2 pack is better than others.
So I'd use them.
Well, we proved last week we can score from
them all. Yeah. I was so shocked by it, I forgot to rip it.
Yeah, I think
technically we didn't score from them all, but we did.
I think we should see a lot more mauling and a lot more just taking them to the woodshed, as Eddie O'Sullivan would say. That's the kind of thing we need to do. We really do.
Eddie was a great man for the old Bon Mo, wasn't he?
He has some great ones. He really does. Running out of there with your hair on fire is another favourite one of mine.
I wonder if Stuart Lancaster will have any of those little expressions.
I don't know if he ever tried to unring a bell.
Or put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Anyway,
one thing, speaking of putting toothpaste back in the tube, Ruan Pienaar, a lot of debate up in Ulster about his contract not being renewed or not being allowed to be renewed by the IRFU.
I'm firmly able to see both sides of that story. I think on one hand it is a tragedy. It's personally a tragedy for him because he's all happy up there. His kids are settled. His wife's settled. He wants to play out his career there. He's retired internationally now, and it's all, la 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 la. If he got another year, it'd be all holding hands, walking around rainbows. So personally for him, it's not great, but the poor guy will have to console himself by making shitloads of money in France, which
he didn't want to do.
Well, he's very kind of.
He's
not driven by money as much.
And he
to Toulon.
Yeah.
And he
stayed.
He stayed in Ulster.
So.
Well, no, I think it's great that the IRFU have become. You see. What we want from the IRFU, we want top level professional administration. And the IRFU are acting like top-level professional administrators of an English football club. Now, not a classy club, like a club like Newcastle or
Well,
Charlton, maybe.
I think
But
you're being a
that's
bit
what they're
tabloid
trying
on
to
that
do.
there,
Well,
Dave.
that's what
now.
they're doing. I mean,
Uh,
we always say that rugby's special because of the bonds, the community, blah, 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 out the door.
Well, what I was developing there was kind of, it's hard on him. It's obviously hard on Ulster Rugby because he's, they're so dependent on him. And I do feel bad for Ulster fans and I feel bad for him. But
Look, we've been
the other
through
side of
before.
it
We were
is,
through with Contapomi, we were through with
Hines.
Hines. I wouldn't.
And we didn't like it one little bit.
exactly.
Well, particularly Hines.
We
I
didn't
didn't
like
really
it.
mind Contapomi because there was actually a player coming through who Contapomi had been there for 7 or 8 seasons.
Yeah.
He players get to a point where they're nearly past their sell-by date. I think that this is part of the professional rugby. I wouldn't be having wouldn't feel too sorry for him because he has to take his kids out.
Well, no,
of school.
no.
Like that's part and
I
parcel
do.
for being a pro player.
I do, feel that way for him. But the other side of that whole argument is, and the last 2 Irish scrum half that were Lions were John Robbie and your man who he replaced on that 1980 tour, whose name is escaping me for the moment.
Patterson, was it?
Patterson.
Yeah.
And, Tomas O'Leary was selected. And Conor Murray. So
Until Conor Murray,
right.
sorry. Patterson was saying himself, who's an Ulster guy, was saying, they didn't develop a scrum half. Okay, you could say guys didn't come through for them, blah, blah, blah. But did they really think a whole heap about, were they motivated to develop a scrum or buy in one like we've just done, as they would have been had Ruan Pienaar not been there? Now, yes, there's loads of other sides of it about how he can develop players, how he mentored Paddy Jackson, how he, all of those
Dave
things.
Shanahan for Lions 2020. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, if he hadn't have been there, like he hasn't had a great influence on the scrum halves coming through because there bloody aren't any. So his mentoring of scrum halves hasn't, there haven't been any to mentor.
However,
So all I'm saying is I see both sides of it.
his mentoring of out halves,
Has been great.
he's
Yeah.
turned a fairly mentally fragile waif of a fella into a guy who can go down and stare your man's countryman face to face
Yeah.
in South Africa, in Jackson. Does anyone
Absolutely.
think Paddy Jackson be an international if it wasn't for Ruan Pienaar?
He certainly would be a
Well,
lot.
I think it's like he took
a lot further
responsibility
back.
off him, just like Conor Murray took responsibility off him when he was playing for Ireland, which might actually point at that Jackson isn't the all-rounded player.
Well, I don't think
if your scrum half has to take responsibility
Yeah. Well,
for
no,
the out
but
half.
you get a guy like
Well,
I
the
mean,
guy is
apart
7
from-
years of age at the time,
Ruan Pienaar
fairness.
is a guy who came in here and he was a high profile signing. He came in here on not bad money, I would suggest, but he gave everything he had to Ulster Rugby.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely everything. Does anyone think that he could have played any better for Ulster in his time here?
No.
No. And he played injured and he played
injured,
long
he played-
season. He played.
He played. If I guarantee you, if our equivalent of Ruan Pienaar, Issa Nasiwa, was shown the door without a buy your leave, we'd go feckin' mental.
What about
Yeah.
Contapomi?
Contapomi actually made the choice to leave. He
Well-
went. No, Contapomi wanted to go to earn big money to open up a hospital in Argentina.
Yeah, he was.
He was also he was also down
No,
to
it's-
him not being offered a contract.
Well, he had
because
made the
they had
choice.
Sexton coming through.
He'd made the choice already that he was going to France for the big payday.
I don't think that came into it. I mean, I know Sexton didn't just appear out of nothing in the semi-final to Munster,
I
like
heard
people
Gordon
say.
Darcy been
but
interviewed. Gordon Darcy been interviewed, and they asked him about, and he actually said, it was no surprise. It was Shane Horgan. He said there was no surprise. He said we knew that Contapomi was leaving. We knew about it right from the get go, and that Sexton was coming through. There was no big dramas about it. That Sexton was there to come through, and he was coming through in that season. Like that's why he came through. He played back in the match against Cast into December.
He was already.
It
in
wasn't.
Ireland. He was
And ended
already
up
in
playing for
Ireland.
Mary's
It
the next
wasn't
week.
as though he just came
Yeah,
through
no,
and just.
that's my point. Yeah, but the situation is different because it's not like Pienaar's blocking anyone.
No, that's true.
I mean, there's nobody.
That's an indictment on Ulster.
That's an
Rugby.
indictment on Ulster, but it's not an indictment on him. And him being there
No.
hasn't stopped young scrum halves coming through. Him being there might mean that in 5 years' time somebody will come through because some kid will want to be Ruan Pienaar.
Yeah, it hasn't stopped them coming through, but it's been a comfort blanket to Ulster Rugby, and it meant that they haven't perhaps been scouring the world for a scrum half like we've been scouring for Gibson Park. they haven't quite been, because like also who'd come in to play second
up to the
fiddle.
end of last season, we
to
had
him.
2 Irish internationals playing. So it's very difficult for, say, Luke McGrath coming through, and all of a sudden he sees 2 bed blockers in front of him, the reserve Irish out half and the third choice Irish out half, pretty much blocking any progress he's going to get in any big European Cup match that Leinster play. Likelihood was Redden started and Boss was on the bench, or vice versa. So it's very difficult for a Leinster scrum half to come through. But yet there is a young kid that stepped in, the captain of the team last Saturday, Friday night. Okay, we went off overseas and bought Gibson Park to possibly, but
We kind of had to.
but it has to be the onus on Ulster Rugby to try and develop players all the way through. Just like we're going back to Contapomi, you need to have somebody coming in. Like, players' careers are short enough,
Guys
and they don't
has
last.
to be there to develop.
Yeah, well,
That's the point.
look, for example,
Whether
You
Ulster
know-
didn't go out and get one, or whether one didn't come through, there's nobody there to develop. I mean, they could have.
You know what? If I was Ulster, if I was the CEO of Ulster, and I'd be sitting there and I'm thinking, you know what, Luke McGrath, he's not a bad player, but look, he's 20 years of age. Just going back a couple of years ago, he's 20 years of age. Who's in front of him? The 2 or the third and the second choice Irish international. Do you know what?
Get him up here.
Maybe we should go down and try and ask him, does he want to come play in Ulster and get?
they tried that with Dave Shanahan, didn't they?
Yeah,
They
they did that.
They got him
went
from,
and they got
from Leinster.
they got a guy
Leinster.
out of Leinster's academy, the Leinster academy scrum half. But I mean, you
Have a
can't.
look.
This was always my problem with the national squad succession strategy document. That it meant it wouldn't actually produce any players of any higher quality. All you'd have is more experienced players. You wouldn't necessarily have any better players. And that was my problem with it. Experience is not equal to improvement.
Not
Experience
necessarily
equals
equal.
experience.
Not necessarily equal, but
I mean, how much better is Duncan Williams for all the game time he's had over the last 12 months? Is he anywhere? He's still,
Well, you know what
he's
you
still the
have?
same player as he
But
was.
from him
He's
in
a lot
experience, you know what you've probably done now?
Ruled him out.
Well, you've probably ruled him out because you've actually seen him play.
No, but there is that possibility. But I just don't see it happening, and I also see it damaging our reputation
if you look at Ulster,
as a destination for.
if you look at Ulster in, I think it's fairly damaged anyway.
Yeah,
the way
possibly,
the
yeah.
RFU handle things, like you're either going to buy into a union way of life or you're not. And let's face it, apart from England and France and possibly Wales, there are no other.
Do you not think there's hundreds of rugby professionals all around the world who are going, God, I'd love to stay in Auckland for another season or another 3 seasons, or I'd love to stay in Worcester, or I'd love to stay in Harlequins. And the CEO is saying, actually, we're not renewing your
But
contract.
the CEO
next year.
of Ulster didn't say that. The CEO of Ulster said,
The
"We
CEO
want."
of-
The
the
CEO,
CEO
of
of
Ulster,
Irish
the CEO
Rugby.
of Ulster
Sure.
said, "Yes, we'll renew your
Sorry, the
contract
people
next
who-
year." That's the point. That's,
Okay.
You see, that's the difference.
Well, no,
Jason.
the person who actually signs the checks, the
Ah, well.
ultimate guy who signs the checks, said you can't.
Yeah, well, see, that's a
Who's-
different.
No,
argument. That's a
it's
different
still
point entirely.
it's still the person who's running the rugby in Ireland.
Can you think of anyone in Ulster rugby who wants to get rid of Pina?
Nope.
Marshall.
And that's the point. You see.
Speaking of Marshes, poor Alcohol Marsh, I think, was the only one that sat on the bench last weekend. I didn't harken back to it, but can you see him with the 2 tries Carberry scored? You could see Carberry going over and him going,
The one I'd be wondering about is that Ross Byrne wasn't on the bench. I was surprised by that.
no, but you know,
I would have gone with Byrne on the bench over Marsh. In point of fact,
yeah, I don't know if
Because
he's.
Marsh kind of has the possession, doesn't he?
He has
Yeah.
possession, yeah. You can't.
He has the experience, as you were mentioning.
well, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think he's fine. He's a fine bench player, and you know he'll do a job a couple of times.
I always
during
feel
the
bad
season.
about doing down Colin Marsh because I think he's a very good player. I think his issues aren't technical.
Well, we're kind of going back into part 1 there, actually, Dave. So, what I was going to say about Ulster was, if you look at their other position of weakness, which is the back row, where they've signed Kutsia, look at the guys like Frankie Taggart, Lorcan Dow, all these guys that were coming through. They seem to disappear. Now, I don't know. I'm not up in Ulster. Maybe they're rubbish. Maybe, you know.
The
But
referee wasn't so crash
they
hot and
looked-
shutting down that position, was it?
Yeah, but they looked really, really good for under 20s. Both of those
Lorcan
guys.
Dow was moved to.
I think he's still there. Is he? Oh, maybe you're right.
Oh, no, I don't. I can't remember. There's
But-
something about it. I can't remember. Sorry.
Maybe it's Frankie Taggart that's moved, but like they just after the under 20s, there was just nothing about them. And there is a back row is a position that Ulster are screwed in, like royally screwed. Wilson has come to the end of his time. If you know, I'd say it has to be his last season. Chris Henry has gone really off the boil. Great
He's
player.
A lot of injuries. It's very hard for him to get a run. of
Great
games
player,
to be
but
in
he's
good
not
form.
getting any younger either. They've got like Clive Ross, Mike Ross's first cousin, who's very good, solid player, but he's not going to win you
Reedy.
Heineken Cup. And they've got Reedy, who is again good,
Did
solid
a
player
lot better on that South African tour than I expected.
than we all
actually.
thought.
Yeah.
And he is good player. The old Kiwis with the good basics thing, you know. He's
But you see, just to tie back into what you were saying, if the IRFU had said, no, you can't sign Coetzee because you've got a bunch of guys like Lorcan Dow, like Frankie Taggart, who played under 20s, been to Junior World Cups, etc., etc., etc. Bring those guys through, then I'd understand it. But they didn't. They let them go out and sign your man Coetzee.
yeah. But Coetzee is quite young, and you know, Pienaar, by the letter of the law, like Pienaar got his last contract. I think it was just about to begin when he was 30, but he signed it when he was still 29. So by the letter, and Issa Nasiwa was something similar. He signed a contract in 2012 for us that he actually finished a year early due to injury.
Yeah,
You would have signed another one, though, right?
Well, but still, he probably wouldn't. He probably
No,
wouldn't have been let.
But the one
If
you
he
just
did.
signed last season.
No, he did sign that in this case, but look, let's say he didn't get injured and he played out until 2013. I'd say he wouldn't have been playing for
Oh, I
Leinster
wouldn't think so,
anymore.
no.
You know,
But
But-
then that's how they got rid of Hines. I mean, that was travesty.
Yeah.
But do you know, we sold Jordan and we got Brad Dorn.
God
Yeah, we
love us.
replaced him with a younger player, younger natively developed player. Well done, the RFU.
So looking forward to some of the other fixtures of the weekend. The only one that really sort of jumps out at me again is Connacht's match with the Ospreys. Ospreys, I thought, looked. Now, admittedly, they beat
Callow, useless, rubbish,
useless Zebre.
crap. No, it has to be said. Zebre has to be said. Have the two best jerseys in the league this year. Their home and away jerseys are absolute beauts.
I'm sure you'll be sporting one next weekend.
You
Dave.
never know. They're lovely. It'd be the first time I'd ever think of buying one of them. Anyway, they're lovely jerseys. Carry on.
But Connacht have to get their show back on the road. And they're playing they're playing at home in the sports grounds. So I think that's going to be a pretty good game.
We had two teams who. I mean, the Ospreys have. I mean, there was.
And the Ospreys were robbed last time they were in the sports ground with
were,
that
yeah.
famous
Ospreys were
decision
a
where his
team that
knee
have
was on the
always-
ground.
Have always played nice rugby or good rugby.
So
And they're,
But they seem to be getting a bit more hype about them this
yeah,
season.
there's more coming through. They like a lot of teams. They were at a peak and they kind of fell off that peak, and now they're rebuilding again, and they're on the. They think they're on the upward track. We'll see.
Ospreys have a 52-point victory. Okay, it was only against Zebre behind them, where they ran around and threw the ball around and looked good.
Stretch the legs.
They've also got a bit of history there, where they want to event like Glasgow lost twice in a row. The Ospreys lost in controversial circumstances, which kind of ruined their season. At that point, was that there was kind of do or die that game.
They were on the.
They
on
could
the
have got top
cusp
six.
of the teeter totter, as our American friends would say.
Exactly. So they've got those two things, and they've also got the fact that Connacht are the league champions and therefore have a target right in the middle of their forehead. So all of those things, and then you've also got Connacht are
Did Ospreys
undercooked
Ospreys
and injured.
out of the European Cup.
Yeah, they're in the Amlin.
They're playing in the Amlin.
There's only one Welsh team, Scarlets.
Because that was,
That's it.
I mean, in fairness, we were just after talking about the IRFU and slagging them off. Fair play. They targeted that second Welsh place. So they did.
Yeah, and they got it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's going to be our game against Glasgow, and that game between, I think they're the games of the round.
Yeah,
and
the
they're
other
going
one is Munster Cardiff, but Munster's at home and they normally have their number over Cardiff.
I think Munster will give them a good few
Cardiff
slaps.
think that this is it. Cardiff.
Nick Williams will have a nice homecoming though.
Every year, Cardiff. In a way, I feel sorry for them because I met quite a few Cardiff fans, and a lot of them are nice. No, I mean they are.
I agree.
It's hard following Cardiff. I mean, it's easy following Leinster. In
It's
fairness.
a basket case of
Our worst season in recent years, we got to extra time in the European Cup semi-final. I mean, if you're following a club like Cardiff, that is, as you say, exactly, it's a great phrase, a basket case of a
But
club.
they've got to two.
They won the
well,
Amlin
they
2010,
Yeah.
beating Johnny Wilkinson
well,
still
at
on
that season, the season before they were beaten in the semi-final in the
on,
European
on
Cup
penalties.
kicks.
Yeah.
The following season they went on and they got to they won
Won
the
the
Amlin,
Mm-hmm.
and then a couple of seasons later,
They got
Leinster
absolutely
they
destroyed.
did in a quarter-final
Yeah.
by
Well,
Leinster.
all Welsh rugby was kind of strangled financially in those from 2009 on. So
But
But
the
John,
thing,
you're our Welsh correspondent. Is
Am I?
there seems to have been a bit of developments within the Welsh as regards buying into the Pro 12 and
Well, I don't know whether
No, that's not true.
whether they're buying into it or whether they're like. I always think of the Welsh clubs in the Pro 12 as, you know, they want to shag a supermodel, but the only person that fancies them is their wife, and they're not interested. They don't care how much their wife loves them. They just want to go off and shag that supermodel the whole time. And
She doesn't even know they
the
exist.
supermodel doesn't know they exist and would probably have them shot if they came near her. But they still holding that torch, and
Loving the analogy.
that seems to be the
I
way
think
they're
that was
going.
one of the laws in the Doomsday Book that you were allowed to shoot a Welshman if he crossed onto your farm.
So, you know, if I was the Welsh, I'd be going, Jesus, you may not be much love, but you know, you're looking good to me, and I'd be
And
playing in the
at
Pro
least you
12.
make me dinner.
Exactly. I'd be saying maybe if that supermodel changes her mind, I'll change mine. But in the meantime,
Cardiff are a team that every year, every season, they go into the season filled with optimism, filled with hope that this year is going to be different. They have generally one or two signings that you know are quite interesting, like Nick Williams is this year.
Willis Halla, hold up.
Yeah, and I was just
That
saying,
guy is-
I was going to try and get Jason to
Jason
say
to say that. What's that guy that played with Jamie Gibson Park for the Hurricanes there? What was his name?
Nick Williams is
Willis what? Willis.
he was
What
coming.
you talking about,
He's coming
Willis?
towards the end of his career. Do you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
signed this guy that was pretty poor for Munster. Kind of went off to Italy, then came back. Had about 4 years that were good in Ulster, but now he's kind of he's early 30s. He's done and they go.
He still looks like he's
He
up
play-
for the scrap.
He has a way of playing, and if a team can, like Ulster did indeed, if a team can focus what they do around that, it can be very effective. The only problem is it can be stopped because he has weaknesses. Back of a scrum, for example, he's a very slow.
Just waggle a burger at the back of his.
Well, I mean, he's not like that anymore. I mean, he once he accepted Jesus as his personal savior, it made a big difference to him, But he has technical issues, like he's a very slow disengager at the back of his scrum, for example. And Leinster targeted that, if you recall, in the Pro 12 final, in Ulster's RDS.
Yeah.
So there's things like that. So, but Cardiff are always very confident going into a season, and then slowly the season begins to peter out as Welsh selections are made and the players realise they don't actually have to bother anymore. And they don't, and it all falls apart for Cardiff. If they can get their players actually focused, they'll have a really good team.
Yeah, I think they have. Their team looks quite. And I've been slagged about it last year, saying that Cardiff were the coming team, but someday I'll be right. I'm going to keep saying it for another 15 seasons, and
You
someday I'll be right.
You mentioned the Welsh selection. There's one Welsh selection that might have an effect on the national team. Is tomorrow? I think it's the selection of the coach for coach of
Gats.
the Lions, and it seems to be all the money's going on Gatlin to get reappointed, which presumably means he's going to step aside from the Welsh
For a
national
year.
coach for a year,
Mhm.
as he did the last time round.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
knock-on effect, that could have a significant knock-on effect in Ireland. Gatland,
In what way?
in that it means that Joe Schmidt has to go home in order to get noticed.
Yeah, I don't think Joe Schmidt is that focused on the bigger picture of his
I think Joe
long-term
Schmidt
career.
got
I think
noticed
he's
when his Irish team beat South Africa.
No, New Zealand couldn't care less about it.
That's a big thing. The
It
only
is
result that
for
they
the
care
Kiwis,
about
yeah.
is
It is.
whoever beats South Africa has to
Yeah.
you have to take notice of that.
Like if you see the look on Sean Fitzpatrick's face in
But sure,
1996
Declan
when they
Kidney's
won their
Ireland beat
first
South Africa.
series. I know it was only their 6th series, but it was the first series they ever won in South Africa, and
Oh yeah, I mean it is the big rivalry, and it's the only
Yeah.
team that they are the only team that New Zealand even vaguely begin to think about, perhaps respecting.
Yeah.
Especially in South Africa.
Yeah, but no, I think Joe has to go home if he wants a New Zealand job. I think this way he's going to have to coach in New
He's
Zealand.
delayed that decision another 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he has, yeah.
So it
We're
means
all
the
on
jury's
tenterhooks
still
here.
out.
I hope he stays. I mean, the guy has been nothing but brilliant for Ireland.
Absolutely. I don't think that you'll find very many dissenting voices.
The contribution he's made to, I mean, he really pisses me off the way what he does. Now he's the poacher turned gamekeeper thing.
Oh yeah.
But that's no Irish coach's job is to care about Leinster.
Absolutely.
An Irish coach's job is to care about Ireland, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from both sides. So, he's been brilliant for Ireland. He's been massively successful at everything he's done.
But
So-
here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. okay, Sexton's injured at the moment, but you've got a kid coming through, and they gave him an opportunity, Carberry, right? Whether he's the next, you know, Ian Madigan
Or Ian Keatley.
or
Is he
or,
Ian Madigan or Ian Keatley?
or Johnny Sexton, right? Who knows what he's going to end
Or
up.
Carlos
But
Spencer.
they've given him an opportunity because there's a potential under the current regime in Irish rugby that he can play. If we were, say, in a French situation where the clubs are preeminent,
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Sexton, okay, admittedly he's injured at the moment, but let's say he wasn't, he's playing every game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
yeah.
he's playing every match,
Yeah, no, I
and
agree
there's
with you.
no
There-
opportunity.
There are development
There's
opportunities.
just
no,
10.
right? Yeah, yeah.
So you've got this. So Sexton's coming into his 30s now. Clearly, he can't play forever. Rugby is a massively attritional sport. Even to say,
Especially the
God,
way he plays it.
especially the way he plays it. Like he's been. We've watched him for the last 8-9 seasons. You know, there's not. I wouldn't say there's a whole load left in his tank. You know, as a 30 or 31-year-old man.
His target is the 2019 World Cup.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
fair
it.
enough.
Well,
That's-
his
that's 3
contract
years.
runs to
Yeah,
the.
that's 3 years' time, right?
Yeah.
So we have to have a succession plan in place, not just Irish rugby, but Leinster rugby.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this kid that's 20. Oh, let's hope he becomes a superstar. If he does, he does. Brilliant. If he doesn't, well, you know, we look for
No,
somebody
actually,
else.
I actually think we're fortunate that we have, and I'll say it again, I think we have a couple of kids.
Yeah, of course. And I just
Yeah.
picked out him.
Yeah, yeah, but
you know, you
I
can say
think
the
that's
same.
a great thing.
I can say the same thing about Ringrose. O'Loughlin looked good. Even Sean O'Brien going back 5 or 6
Yeah.
years ago. You know, there was a whole bunch of.
But you
fellas
look
in
at
front of
guys
him.
like Van der Fleer and Levy, who I think are just top-notch talents.
Yeah.
Like elite, totally elite guys.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I agree. No, that's the advantage of the Irish system. The advantage of the Irish system is that it gives us an opportunity to see guys like this. The disadvantage of the Irish system is that it gives us an opportunity to see these guys because the internationals aren't playing in our bread and butter league,
Yeah.
and that is killing us. That is killing the perception of our league.
I think they're going to change it next season.
They are going to have to.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not in favour of shortening the number of games, but I'm certainly in favour of moving the games around and changing what you do with the British and Irish Cup or Celtic Cup, whatever, Anglo Welsh, however you work that out. I still think the league needs the number of games it has, but I think they have to be planned better.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the match there last week again, or 2 weeks ago against Bath. Bath went out and they pretty much picked a full strength team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, if they're talking about player welfare, they don't seem to give fiddlers. They played them in front of 2,500 people in Donnybrook. You know, in an absolute meaningless Mickey Mouse match that Leinster couldn't give a fiddlers whether we
Yeah, but they want to be hitting the ground running in the Premiership.
Fair enough, but there's these guys that at the end of the season are going to go, well, you know what, I'm exhausted, but still we want the pound of flesh out of you. Rather than actually managing the player and looking after their welfare. It's just to get, you know, your perceived best 15 out on the pitch. Like, surely to God, you should have a best 30 squad.
Well, ideally, that's what you do have. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
I
what
mean-
Bougelel has in France. But if you look at how the two different structures work, like you're saying about how we're able to develop players, we're allowed to develop, we're encouraged to develop, we're forced in some cases to
Yeah, we've
develop
no choice
players.
but to develop.
Financially, we've no choice either. It's not just the fact that we're IRFU run. Even if the IRFU weren't running us and the provinces were on their own, the money isn't there. We've got to develop. We've got to go from our academy. We can't just go and say, give us, you know, who's top trumps this week? Oh, we'll have 2 of him and 4 of him. And, you
And
know,
do you know what? That's
can't-
why that there's 11,000 season ticket holders and why we generally get somewhere between 15 and 18,000 people going to most of our matches. Because you feel, God, you know what? I went to school with that kid's dad.
Or whatever.
Or whatever. As opposed to...
It used to be, I went to school with that kid.
I know, yeah, it's sad, isn't it? But as opposed,
I used to fancy
as
his
opposed
granny
to,
when she was young.
we've just signed this guy from New Zealand who played for New Zealand under 20s, and he's not a bad player. But he's here. We know he's here for 2 years, and he doesn't give a fiddlers about Leinster, and we don't really give a fiddlers about him. And
There's
his
a lot of
family.
fiddlers happening tonight. We'll have to.
Yeah. But some
Violin
some of these guys
Players
do.
Association
some
will
of
be
these
looking
guys
for
come in
tax.
and some of these guys come in and they do actually care. You know, about where they end up because you know they build up a rapport, they build up a reputation or a relationship. So I mean that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Owen Finnegan.
Yeah. Owen Finnegan was actually from here, so that's kind of. But the thing is, I mean, unless we find a balance between when our internationals are available and when they're available to the clubs, I mean, we're not going to have
And I'm
you know,
sure
a
we will.
structure to work this development program in, and that's how. I mean, the current or the golden generation were developed under a not dissimilar structure to the one we have right now, where there were fewer foreign players, and it worked. But the question is how much
A
of
lot
that,
fewer games.
how much of that was nature and how much of that was nurture.
But I mean, I remember a few years ago we played Fiji down in Thomond Park.
Yes.
First of all, the media got all their nose bent out of shape. How dare we insult Fiji by not playing this match in the Aviva
So not
Stadium?
giving them
Right.
caps.
Not given caps. Then if you don't pick your full strength Irish international first 15 team and you end up playing, let's say, Noel Reid instead of
Henshaw.
Henshaw, for instance, then it's an insult again to Fiji because you didn't pick your full strength Irish international team. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't have these guys playing look at the NFL, right? Rugby and NFL, there's not too much dissimilarity between the amount of hits that the players take. The NFL lasts about less than 20 games. Do you know what I mean? You're expecting rugby players to play 30 games. If you want to play them to play all the Pro 12, all the Six Nations, all the European Cup, and then go and play the Autumn Internationals and then go on a summer tour and play 2 or 3 more matches at the end of the season. You can't have it.
No, I'm not saying that you should have that.
You could actually be playing about 45 games if you're to do all
But
that.
I mean, the other side of that is then why are you playing money games in Chicago? That's the other side of the thing. If player
For money, I'd say.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is player welfare-ish, But no, I agree with that. The other side of it is because what you want to do is you want to develop young players and you want to not only bring them through but also broaden the player base. But the thing is, those players have to have a base to play in, and if you damage the reputation and the standing and the structure of your bread and butter competition too much, then they don't have that base. It just crumbles away beneath them.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
that's a good point, Dave. All right, boys.
Was it?
All right,
No,
boys.
but
Thanks very much as ever, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.